Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. I'm Dr. Kevin Heaney from Applied Ocean Sciences, here to talk about ocean noise and underwater ocean acoustics. I'm super excited to be at a Geography 2050. It's my first foray into this community. One of the things I like the best about ocean acoustics is how global it is and all of the geography that I get to play with. So I'll be talking about the global ocean challenges. The one in particular I'll be addressing is ocean noise. Here's a, we have to start with a globe if we're doing geography. This is a global shipping model, which I'll show you later in real detail, but it just shows you the average sound level for the month of April, over the ocean. This is only shipping. It doesn't include wind. So if you look in the southern ocean here, we're in the South Pacific, you can see that it's very quiet. That's a region dominated by wind. But you can see shipping lanes. You can see in the polar regions, it's noisy. It's shallow, other places. So the outline of the talk, I'll be talking about sound sources in the ocean, sound propagation in the ocean, marine mammal presence and sensitivity. And I'll be going through global ocean model that we have, look at COVID-19 impacts. We'll talk about the Arctic. These are, so certainly places where there's rising concern about the impact of man-made noise. So first, a bit of background. Sound travels very well in the sea, which is why marine mammals have evolved with the capabilities of listening and sending sound. Here's a plot showing levels and frequency on the x-axis. So very low frequencies are on the left with 10 and 100 hertz. That's what we hear. Up into the 1,000 hertz and 10,000 hertz. This is where the dolphins transmit sound. These blue lines are wind noise for high wind speeds, and you can see they peak around 500 hertz. And the red and orange here are shipping noise in the lower frequencies, and then very loud things are earthquakes, which are louder than everything else, but they're very low frequency. I recommend the docits.org website it's this discovery of sound in the sea for really great background information on all of this stuff. So sound in the ocean doesn't travel straight. It goes up and down depending on the temperature profile and pressure. You can see on the left, if there's a surface ship, sound goes down right away, and then it bounces off the bottom, and you end up with these refracted paths in deep water. If you're in northern latitudes, the sound speed has a minimum near the surface, and you end up with the sound being trapped near the surface, and sound travels significantly better. You'll see evidence of that in our global sound maps. In shallow water, there's no refraction. Sound just hits the surface and the bottom, and it dies out with range. This is a plot in the Barents Sea. So depending on where you are geographically, the sound can travel in very different ways, and that'll affect the average sound. We anticipate, in the low frequencies, sound will travel all the way across the ocean. So animals and ships are hearing each other from quite a significant distance. So the sound sources in the ocean, the natural sound sources are wind and waves. We think of them together. The wind blows and the waves form, and then the waves break and bubbles make noise. It's a combination of all of the above, depending on your frequency. Rain makes noise, and marine mammals make a significant amount of noise, or an observable amount of noise. And then lightning is super loud. I didn't add earthquakes and volcanoes. They're also in there as well. Anthropogenic or man-made sound sources are shipping, seismic exploration, where they're setting off shots, or impulsive sounds to study the seafloor and below it, looking for oil. Those can be heard all the way across the ocean basin. Navy sonars of multiple types. Pile driving in shallow water is important. And then explosions. There's lots of unexploded ordnance in the world, and if it's detonated, it makes a significant sound that can be heard a long ways. In particular, the North Sea between the UK and Europe, there's a significant problem of unexploded ordnances, and it affects the ocean soundscape there. So marine mammals and sound. So, marine mammals, and not just mammals, but fish and invertebrates, they use sound for hunting, for communicating, and for navigating. How much so, we're not quite sure, but they do hear each other and talk to each other. And we have recordings of them grunting and using sound while fishing, in particular dolphins. There's a study, this is getting towards the health of the animals in the ocean soundscape. On September 11th, the shipping numbers in the world dropped because of an immediate freeze of the terrorist attacks on global security. But there's a paper put out in the Bay of Fundy, which is eastern Canada. it went from 12 ships in the small bay, which is a loud area, down to 3 ships, and it reduced the shipping noise level by 7 decibels. So that's a number to keep in mind. That's a large number. 3 dB or 3 decibels is twice the amount of energy. And so dropping it by 7 is significant. It turns out to be a fourth. But at the same time, these researchers were doing studies, and they have hormonal measurements from fin whales. They picked up the feces using fishes and nets and feces-smelling dogs, and then studied that and observed a significant drop in the cortisol level, which is a stress hormone. So the animals are in the noisy environment, but the presence of shipping and the increase in shipping is certainly raising, there's observations that it's raising their stress level. So that's one of the reasons we care. The other is limiting their communication distances and their ability to hunt and navigate, which are hard to quantify. So let's talk about modeling ocean noise. Actually, these might be slightly in the wrong order, but I'm going to show you a impact of COVID, where there's also a significant drop in the numbers of ships due to reduced economic activity. Spire provided the AIS data. AIS is a global positioning beacon for each ship, and we have the March, April for 2019 and 2020. The acoustic model was run from every source out at 50 hertz, and then we've molded them together to get the ocean soundscape. So we're going to start with April 2019. This is a snapshot, so every dot you hear is an individual ship. We've run from the ships out, and let me use the mouse and show you some things. One of the things you see is that, again, it's super quiet in the South Pacific. This is shipping only, so there's no wind on this. And then when you get further into the northern latitudes, there's a lot more ships because of the US-Asia connection and the US-European and Europe through the Med to Asia. And so but the other thing that happens is the polar surface temperatures are significantly colder because of the climate and the distance from the equator, and sound travels better in those regions. It stays off of the seafloor. So part of what you're seeing here is a large number of ships, but another part you're seeing is significant propagation effects. In the South Pacific, there's very poor propagation. You can see that here. If we go to the average of the month, this is the entire month of April average for 2019, now you start to see shipping lanes. There's several lanes from the Cape of Good Hope up to Brazil, across to Buenos Aires, and then south. You can see a shipping lane here along South America. In Europe, there's a really nice shipping lane here from Cape of Good Hope up to the Strait of Malacca. You also see very high shipping levels in the Bay of Biscay, off of France and Spain, as well as the Med. And there's lots of traffic going to Russia along the coast of Norway. So this was done for the April 2019 time period. And then the next plot is the April 2020, which is after COVID. There's one anomaly which will catch your eye, which is right here. There's a ship that sat there the whole time. It's probably not real, but it wasn't filtered out. Apart from that, you can see that the lanes narrow, and there's significantly more blue and black between the two. If I go back and forth, if you take a spot and focus your eye on it, you know, from 2019 to 2020, there's an observable drop in the noise level across the board. I should also point out that the dynamic scale here is in decibels per micropascal squared, but it's 50 dB of dynamic range. So the dynamic range is huge. If you're seeing anything, it's a notable drop. I'll point out a couple places. One, there's a lot less ships going around the Cape of Good Hope, Strait of Magellan from the Good Hope. There's a region. And anyway, so if we do a difference map, we see, and this is now plotted of every place with color. This is the difference, the reduction in sound due to the lack of shipping and COVID. And so one of the things you see is it's kind of dominated down off of Antarctica, where there are very few ships, and so that's not particularly relevant. What is important is, you know, the wide swaths of area where here in the central North Atlantic it's significantly quieter. It's a lot quieter north of Halifax and Nova Scotia, and this is the European-US shipping lane. North of Hawaii, there's a large region that is quieter. South of Australia, it's significantly quieter. This is the difference between April 2019 and April 2020. So the global average on this was about 3 dB which is, again, is a doubling. So there's a between 2019 and 2020, there was a halving of the acoustic energy in the global ocean. And so what that means, though, is that if you're a marine mammal and you can hear another marine mammal at 20 kilometers, if you reduce the level by half, that would allow you to hear another animal at twice the distance. So instead of 20 kilometers, it's now 40 kilometers. And that can have significant biological impacts. So here's a couple line plots from a few places in the Atlantic. The black is March 2019. Black is March 2020. Blue is April 2020. Red and yellow are March and April of 2019. And so this is the Bay of Biscay. You see in April, there's an observable difference in April compared to March as things really ramped up. But this is the Bay of Biscay, the Western Mediterranean, the North Sea near Norway, and then the central North Atlantic. So, at 3 to 5 dB or 2 to 5 dB average increase or decrease in the sound level. There's a few spots in the Pacific, particularly north of Hawaii. There's a very large signal. We're not quite sure why. Other places there are not big signals. Some of these were because of a small sample size and a movement of the shipping lanes. So let's move on to the shipping noise in the Arctic, which is a big issue. The Arctic Council through PAIM and the World Wildlife Fund have funded a study to look at shipping noise levels between 2013 and 2019 and the impact of the reduced sea ice due to climate change. And so we've been modeling this. We just started. The results will be hopefully presented to the Arctic Council in January or February. So the shipping noise will be modeled from 20 hertz, which is the frequency of fin whale and blue whale transmissions, all the way up to 10 kilohertz, which is where narwhals and dolphins communicate. So the plot on the left is the AIS data from just a snapshot of the data or actually a year average of the data from PAIM. It's the Arctic shipping data. It's the Arctic ship traffic data set. We'll be using that to say where our ships are. It's been filtered, and we're looking primarily north of Iceland in the Bering Sea, Barents, and et cetera. So here's a sound map of sound for the first week of September in 2019. If you follow the map, this is the ice line. It's not a minimum year, but it's significantly down. And we've studied basically the Barents Sea, the Davis Strait, and the Northwest Passage. This is the Beaufort and Chukchi, and then this is the Bering Sea. And so lots of traffic around Norway up here, through the Russian coast, along the Russian coast, and then a lot of traffic, a lot meaning 4 or 5 ships in 1 week through the Bering Strait. And you can see that over here. The model is run on, and that's what the little dots are for. But everywhere you see, there's a significant rise in the noise level over ambient sound. Here's the traffic lanes through the Bering Strait. These are Russian ships, and these are American, presumably. And it's much louder in the western Bering Sea, where it's deep water off of these Russian ports. This is where the marine mammals are, in the shallow water on the shelf, and sound doesn't travel very well there. So if we look at a couple blow-ups, the left is the Bering, Beaufort, and Chukchi. It's the same model. Here's the deep water. You can see the propagation. 90 dB, 87 dB average sound level. That's 30 dB above wind noise. And then up here you can see that the deep water in the Beaufort has an increased level. In the shallow water, ships need to be pretty close to you for marine mammals to hear them. In the Northwest Passage, now you see ships going through really constrained waterways. It's significantly noisy there. This is Davis Strait and Baffin Bay, and this is a lot of servicing of the Mons and the population in Greenland. So we're doing this work for the 6 years, for all seasons. There are about 600 ships in the Arctic in September. That number drops significantly when the ice in midwinter. So to conclude, the ocean is a noisy place. Animals have used this for group communication, food localization, and navigation. Some of that we observe and can define quantitatively. Others we postulate. Man-made sounds are a significant portion of the ocean soundscape, and it likely increases the stress, and it severely limits the animal's ability to use sound. This is called masking, when they can't do what they want to do, they can't hear as they need to due to increased man-made sounds. And again, as climate change increases and it induces Arctic sea ice melting, this will open up the Northwest Passage for more months and more seasons, possibly all year round, and the sensitive ecosystem in the Arctic could be at risk due to shipping noise. So thank you for your attention, and that's it.